allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would everyone please bow their head? Dear Lord, we thank you for bringing us here tonight. We ask that you give this council the wisdom and the strength to do the right thing for the great city of Newman. And this we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Bob. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis.
Present.
Hutchins.
Present.
Candia.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Martina.
Present.
Mayor Caden.
Present. Thank you. Okay. Out of closed session, there's no reportable action. Direction was given to staff and legal counsel. We'll go to item 5, declaration of conflicts of interest. See any this evening? Item 6 are ceremonial matters, and I don't think we have any of those either. Item 7, items from the public, non-agenda items. Any member of the public wish to address the council? Now is the time to do it.
I'd like to address on the...
Sure. Step up to the mic, please.
This is in regards to the
you
peddlers
state
and
your name?
solicitors. Yeah. I will.
State your name, please.
My name is Casey Graham. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council in regards to this. It's on the peddlers and solicitors. I understand there's more muni codes that directly relate to leaflets and flyers. However, it kind of falls into the same category at the same time. A lot of these leaflets are being placed around the neighborhoods, taped to garage doors, and hung on doors by rubber bands and that. They tend to be from recyclers, and the recyclers recycle just about everything. They usually don't have much on the information based on the company that's recycling. They're out of area, phone numbers usually from the Bay Area. They have the people's personal emails on them and not a business email. And there's no license or permits numbers on the flyers that are being left out on the doors and that. So I imagine they aren't following the standard process for the permits with the city. There's a couple problems with these leaflets. When they're taped to the garage doors, they get left there. Sometimes people are out of town for a couple days. It's an easy target for a burglar to come by and realize, hey, nobody's been at this house for 2-3 days, especially on the garage door. They just drive down the street and can see that it's still stuck there, and makes for an easy target. The companies that come back to pick up these things come in box trucks, basically a moving truck. Again, that makes it an easy target for them if they are up to no good. They can pull into a driveway, and a lot of neighbors don't communicate with each other in neighborhoods anymore, unfortunately. But one of those trucks can easily pull into a driveway, back in, and unload or load up stuff, and not going to call a whole lot of attention to themselves. So they tend to be an issue with that as far as possibility of crime. I know a couple people and myself also have called in to complain about solicitors. If you call the city says call the PD. If you call the PD says call the city. It's almost like there's no one knows how to handle it, and it's becoming more and more of a problem. I get about one of these on my garage a month. So that's basically all I had on that issue, is that it needs to be addressed, just because it seems to be an issue. There doesn't seem to be, with them being out of town, I don't know if there's any process for fines or catching these people and citing them.
It just so happens we're going to be talking about that here a little bit later, so.
That's what I was addressing.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you guys again for
Appreciate
the time.
Thanks, Casey. Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
just for the record, can we get Mr. Graham's address for the minutes?
It's 1307 Blue Teal Way.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Graham.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, go to item 8, consent calendar. A is waive all readings of ordinances and resolutions set by title. B is approval of the warrants. C is approval of the minutes of July 22, 2014 meeting.
So moved.
There's a motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Item 9, public hearing. A, Second reading and adoption of ordinance number 2014, next to number, amending Title I, Administrative, amending Chapter 1.09, Purchasing System of the City of Newman City Code, and authorize staff to publish summary of said ordinance. Michael?
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, this is a continuation of this item that was originally heard at your July 22nd, 2014 meeting, in which you unanimously voted to introduce this ordinance and waive the first reading except by title. Again, this is an item whereby it amends a code that was originally adopted in 1958. This code was reviewed by our city attorney, and she's recommended that we adopt some exemptions on there, and these exemptions were spelled out, and we've gone over them in the past, but if you'd like, I could go over them again. Just real quickly, though, just in case there's an emergency, something happens, and you can't go through the formal bidding process, when the commodity can only be obtained by one vendor, for contracts involving the obtaining of professional and specialized skills. We're calling for bids on a competitive basis in the opinion of the purchasing officer is undesirable. When engaged in joint purchasing plans with the state, following under state or piggybacking is what they call it, and when the council shall have adopted a resolution by at least 4 affirmative votes determining the best interests of the city are served without compliance. Again, these were recommendations by our city attorney. We've submitted those for your consideration. Tonight, we are asking you to first hold a public hearing, hear any comments in support or in opposition to these changes, and then close the public hearing, and staff, it would be our recommendation that you amend Title I Administrative, Chapter 1.09, City Purchasing System, and authorize staff to publish a summary ordinance.
Any questions or comments for the city manager before I open the public hearing? Okay, with that being said, the public hearing is open. Anybody wish to address the council? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council for direction.
I just had a couple of quick questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Under the analysis D, the one word that is kind of throwing me is undesirable. What I'm thinking of is on prevailing wage jobs and things like that. Those are undesirable, but I don't see how legally we can say no to that. So a definition of undesirable would be, I think I would need a little more on just undesirable. There's a lot of things that might be undesirable.
Sure. What I would advise the council is if the purchasing officer was ever going to utilize this provision, it would only have to be in accordance with the terms that our city attorney advised us on and under the guidelines that our city attorney set for us. It's not something that we would determine to be undesirable. We'd have to work with our legal counsel on that and making sure that we're following proper state protocol and laws as well as local laws.
Okay, is this a kind of standard, Nubian, in the changes that are being made? I know in a lot of older purchasing agreements from
Right.
different cities.
Since it's an exemption from the procedure, under the circumstances, it provides a little bit more flexibility, but keep in mind that the policy itself still has to comply with law. So it's not an exemption to take it outside of that, so.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what that person thinks, whoever it might be, would still have to comply with everything else in the ordinances and state law, federal law, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Bring it back to council for direction.
Well, I would move that we adopt ordinance number 2014, next to number, amending Title I Administrative, Chapter 1.09 of the City Purchasing System, and authorize staff to publish a summary of said ordinance.
I second that.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, item B, adopt resolution number 2014, next to number, resolution approving a power purchase agreement with Solar City Corporation and authorizing the city manager to execute said agreement for a solar project at the wastewater treatment plant. Lou?
Good evening, Mayor, council members.
Before you tonight is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a power purchase agreement with Solar City for a solar project to be located at our wastewater treatment plant. Our city manager, Public Works Director, Plant Superintendent Lance Perry, our attorney Nubia, and myself have all been involved in one aspect or another with this project. I've been asked to present the report tonight. Should you have any technical questions on the installation, or Kusan or Michael Carpel from Solar City will be able to comment. Our award-winning wastewater treatment plant currently has 500 acres of contiguous land that is used for processing of raw sewage and farming. We propose using 3 acres of this land for the installation of solar panels. Our wastewater treatment plant currently uses 762,000 kilowatt hours during a single year. These panels will produce 746.7 kilowatts DC, which equates to a first-year energy production of 1,243,000 kilowatt hours of electricity, which we will use to power our facility. Solar City did a study of our electrical usage at our facility, and through their modeling has determined the correct size for our wastewater treatment plant. The area that the panels will be located are not being farmed and has no real rental value. Solar City will purchase, install, retain ownership of, and maintain the solar panel system for 20 years. At the end of the 20-year period, we have the choice of either extending the agreement, buying the system, or having Solar City remove the panels at their cost. Here's how the project will work. As the solar panels produce electricity, a meter will measure all the electricity that is produced. The city will pay for all the electricity produced from the panels at a low rate of 11 cents per kilowatt hour. We will use whatever electricity that we need from the panels to run our facility. Any excess electricity goes through another meter and out onto the power grid. The city will receive a credit from PG&E for any excess electricity produced. The amount of the credit varies based upon the time of the year and the time of day. On the left side of your screen are the current rates from PG&E from the most recent bill for one of our wastewater treatment plant meters, compared to what would have paid from the solar project. On the single meter, we were charged $13,770.52 for 1 month. We have multiple meters at our wastewater treatment plant. This one has the most consumption. If we had been on solar power, we'd have paid about $8,188 for the same amount of electricity. During that same month, our combined electrical costs at our wastewater treatment plant was $28,154. Even if we couldn't sell off the excess electricity from these panels, it still would be a good plan to install solar panels. By going forward with the solar project, through cost savings and excess sell-off, we plan to reduce the first year's electrical cost at the wastewater treatment plant by $100,000. This screen is PG&E's rate chart for electricity that we send to them. The amount of credit that we receive varies based upon the time of year and the time of day. During the peak of summer, we would be compensated 52.7 cents, which would be the top of the peak demand, and then in the second category, there's also another peak demand there. It's a little bit hard to read on there. During the winter peak, the amount that we'd be compensated is still above what our cost is for those panels, or if we had to purchase it directly. Historically, PG&E has raised their rates, and we believe that that trend is going to continue. The agreement that we have with Solar City is for a fixed rate of 11 cents per kilowatt hour for the next 20 years. That means our electrical costs at the wastewater treatment plant will remain substantially lower for the next 20 years. Reducing our operating costs at our wastewater treatment plant can help us keep our residents' sewer service rates low. So why Solar City? Solar City is a NASDAQ-traded corporation with over 6,000 employees. As a side note, their stock is up over 85% over the last year. They currently have over 100,000 customers, have completed over 1,000 commercial solar projects. They have the world's top financial investors behind them, such as Google, Honda, U.S. Bancorp, Credit Suisse, and also PG&E. Solar City also has provided us with a performance guarantee. Every 5 years, there'll be a performance review. Should the panels underproduce, causing a reduction in our savings, Solar City provides us a reimbursement which is specified in the performance guarantee agreement. During the 20 years, the panels will be owned and maintained by Solar City. We will not have to expend any of our employees' time on their maintenance. Staff recommends that we conduct a public hearing. Then approve the resolution authorizing the city manager to sign all necessary documents with Solar City. Staff is available to answer any questions you may have.
Questions or comments for Lou, Casino, or city manager? Anybody?
Mayor, there is also a rep from Solar City here that's.
Any questions or comments from the Solar City rep?
What kind of time frame are we looking at?
Go ahead. Would you like to open the public hearing and then maybe the
Yeah, let's
representative from Solar City?
let's
step
do
up?
that. I'll open the public hearing now, Sam. Could you step up to the podium up there? That'd be great, so we'll get you on record.
Good evening. Thank you for having me, City Council, Mayor, staff. My name's Michael Carpel. I work with Solar City. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
What kind of time frame do you, if it's approved, before it would be up and running?
That's a great question. So you're looking anywhere from 6 to 9 months. The reason why that it's not as exact right now is we're going to be working, very closely with Lance out there to make sure that we're really accommodating all of your operations and not disrupting anything that's going on out there. So you can expect this, before summer rates and really hit, which in PG&E territory is next May. So closer to 6 months, possibly up to 9 months.
And you had mentioned selling off. Who can we potentially sell energy off to?
So there's two ways that you can get value for your energy besides directly reducing what you use. The slides that Lance was showing talks about your current retail rates with the utility. If you overproduce during that period, that is the credit that you will get. And when I say credit, that doesn't mean that you'll get a check for it. It means that you won't have to pay future portions of your bill. So for the most part, what the city is going to be working with are credits, because, for example, in the summer peak period, when you have that high value of 52 cents, that's when the solar is actually producing the most energy, the summer peak period. However, an entire year, if you overproduce beyond what you can use, let's say that all your credits max out and you have a zero utility bill besides the fixed costs at the wastewater plant, any excess above that you will get a small check for. But we have specifically designed the system to meet your needs and not to overproduce, and we've sized it to really be the best value for the city.
Thank you.
Council, if in a very simplistic way as well, during the summer, the panels will be generating electricity and getting us credits as it goes onto the grid. Now, what we do at the plant, though, is we run our pumps and our aeration pumps at night when the power's cheaper. So you're getting these credits, but we're running them at a cheaper time. So we're getting, if you're buying the credit and we're selling it at 52, but when we're pumping at night, we're only pumping it at 27. So that in turn saves us some money there as well. That's kind of a simplistic term of how we're using it. We're generating at a high peak time. We're using our peak demand, but we're using it off PG&E peak. We're using it at night when the rates are a lot cheaper. So it allows us to generate and use cheaper electricity while generating at a high dollar cost.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for direction.
Thank you.
I guess this is.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Defer to you. I recommend that one hold public hearing regarding entering into a 20-year solar power service agreement. Now, should we act on number 2 at this point with, okay, and also I move to adopt resolution number 2014, next number, approving a 20-year solar power purchase agreement, PPA, with Solar City Corporation, Solar City, and authorize the city manager to execute the PPA and associated document.
I'll second the motion.
And a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, item 10 is regular business. Some report on potential ordinance changes to Title III, Business Regulations, Chapter 3.03, Peddlers and Solicitors. Steph?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Before you is a report
Is there? Oh, okay, go ahead.
regarding Section 3.03 of the Municipal Code. Before I start, though, I do want to address Mr. Graham's comments regarding handbill distribution and leaflets. That's actually a separate section of the code that we did not review for the purposes of this staff report, but staff is happy to take direction from the council to look into that as well in the same manner. But just wanted to answer that. Referred to as the Peddlers and Solicitors Chapter, Section 3.03 of the Code contains numerous regulations that apply to door-to-door vendors. It originally was adopted as Ordinance 130 in 1937. Essentially, subsection 100.b of said chapter prohibits door-to-door solicitation unless invited by the homeowner or tenant. Solar City has requested an exemption from this section. As discussed at our last council meeting, granting such an exemption would potentially open up the city to legal challenge. Therefore, the City Council directed staff to explore additional options regarding Chapter 3.03. 8 options have been identified for the council's review. They are vendor registration and/or inspection, solicitation time limits, the requirement of ID badges, clarification of no solicitation signage, vendor background checks, the inclusion of admin citations along with misdemeanors as a penalty, the introduction of a no solicitors placard program, and a do not disturb registry. Upon case law review and discussions with legal counsel, it's been found that some courts don't support items 1, 2, 3, and 5. They typically do support signage and a registry program, however. Cumulatively, the courts often look for the following regarding regulating solicitors: that First Amendment rights are protected, that the ordinances are narrowly tailored, meaning specific, that due process rights are respected, that the ordinance or regulation is a reasonable fit to meet the municipality's goals, and that they are non-discriminatory. Therefore, staff recommends that Section 3.03 be revised to comply with case law and updated to include a placard program as well as a do not disturb registry. However, staff is respectfully asking the City Council's direction regarding this chapter. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments for Stephanie?
Definitely, time of day, when would they be able to solicit?
Well, we haven't gone as far as crafting an ordinance for that because I was wanting to get the council's direction. However, examples that I found from other municipalities can be seasonal, like dusk to dawn, or you do a hard time limit such as 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It really varies. Or you could do a little bit of both where you set times, or sunset, whatever's earlier. That could be written.
Thank you.
I gotta
My
tell you,
question, oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Go ahead, Nick.
I gotta tell you, nothing drives me more crazier than one of these guys knocking on my door about 8:45, 9 o'clock at night.
It's definitely a valid concern.
So I'd like to see it, if we go down this road, I'd definitely like to see something like 6 p.m.
One of my questions is on, I'm sorry, Bob,
Go ahead, Don.
is how we're going to vet these people. I know in Sacramento and several other of the larger municipalities, and we have a large elderly population, and that's one of the biggest scams that goes around, is that people come in and say, we'll fix this, we'll fix that, they're not licensed, they're, and all of a sudden, these folks are emptying their bank accounts for this, and the police go out and they're gone, they're into another town, whatever. I just don't, and I understand what you're saying, that the courts have said, okay, you can't do this, this, or this, or this. There's got to be some way we can vet these entities so that they don't prey on our elderly. That's one of my biggest concerns, and you see it almost weekly at some major municipality around us, and I know they're hitting the small ones too if they're hitting the large ones. So I guess that would be my question. How do we vet this?
And I said the same thing when it first came to us, is because we had just finished the Senior Awareness Day, and the chief addressed the seniors with the exact same thing, and that was probably the number one complaint I heard that day from the seniors is being bothered by peddlers coming to their door, and I agree with Nick. they come to my door late at night, they're going to be sorry that they did, number one. But I just have a real problem with having door-to-door vendors or peddlers, the Kirby vacuum cleaners, the carpet cleaner people, and Casey mentioned people leaving things on their doors, and on the garage doors and so forth and so on. I don't know how we could control that, because a lot of times they just walk in neighborhoods and they're just leaving pamphlets. And they may not knock on your door. But just having people come to my door and trying to sell me something, or last week, I was out of town, but my wife called me, had a person come to the door who represented herself as a DirecTV salesperson. Had DirecTV shirt on, DirecTV ID tag, had all the information on DirecTV. So when she called me, and so we started talking with her, and what she was, upgrade your system, yada, yada, yada. Bottom line, when it came down to it, and we said, when we were thinking about doing it, she says, oh, but I'm not really an employee of DirecTV. I'm an employee of satellite television. So I sell DirecTV, I sell Dish Network, I sell here. She represented about 5 different companies. So again, it's how she perceived herself to the homeowner as a DirecTV person. In reality, she wasn't. She really wasn't a DirecTV person. So I called DirecTV the next day and told them, what had happened. And they were familiar with the fact that they utilize the same company who, they'll sell you 5 different satellite companies. But she was wearing a DirecTV shirt, but she didn't work for DirecTV. And when she flipped her ID around the other side, it said Dish Network, and it said whatever else it was. So, and we all know DirecTV is a, well-known company, Dish Network and all those, they're the real deal, but even they have so-called employees who kind of represent them.
They do a lot of the authorized reseller. It's cheaper for them to do it that way.
Yeah, so it is. But I guess what I'm saying is, and just along that line, they came to my door and I was gone, but she spent probably 45 minutes with my wife trying to explain, trying to sell, upgrade our system and everything. I could do this for free, I can do this, can do that. The bottom line was going to end up costing me a couple $100 if I did it. So, again, so that's a door-to-door vendor, and which include a lot of upselling, which concerns me, I don't like being bothered, and I just can't see, and I just don't want our seniors being bothered, and we see the scams that go on all the time, and I'm not saying Solar City or anybody else, I'm just simply saying somehow we have to be able to somehow protect our community from people preying on them.
Well, if I may, I met with our chief last week to discuss these potential options. And although it's not necessarily vetting them ahead of time, but they would require a business license and they would have to carry a copy of that. Obviously, not everybody that knocks on your door at 8 o'clock at night gets a business license. But then if they don't have it with them, and then we set up this no solicitation placard where everyone can put a sign on their door, and then they can call police, and because that person knocked on their door and they can be identified, and they don't have a license with them, they could be cited on the spot. That's one way to at least maybe start sending the message to these companies that, hey, they enforce this particular ordinance. You can't be knocking on the door unless you have a business license. And if they have a no solicitation sign, you can't knock on it at all. That is one way. Like I mentioned in the staff report, given different case laws, you do have flexibility as long as it's narrowly tailored. You have to pretty much have a nexus that shows how are you achieving the goal of protecting seniors. You have to make it very clear in your intent of the ordinance. And as long as we do that, we should be okay, but...
The question, you said cited, what does that mean?
Well, we could create an administrative citation. So right now, the code only says misdemeanor, which is kind of difficult to enforce because that has to go through the DA. By adding an administrative citation element to the penalties subsection, they can be detained through the misdemeanor element, correct? But cited through the admin citation process, which is a more immediate penalty for the violator. of the code. So that it's kind of nice, because right now we don't have that option. So it's kind of hard to arrest someone for knocking on a door, I would imagine.
Well, I guess my question for Nubia, I'm going to bring you into this, is it sounds like, from what Stephanie has said, that there are some changes we're going to have to make.
And I think Stephanie pointed out, there are certain requirements that you have to meet, and I think, and this is why this was brought up and why there's a suggestion to make amendments, because as it currently stands, I think the consensus was that it may not necessarily meet these criteria, right? So, yes, I think that there needs to be some revisions to it. The question is how far the council wants to go.
Well, I did not see, other than the ones you said, 1, 2, 3, and 5, which we can't use, there are none others that I saw in here that require any actual vetting of a solicitor.
Except for food. Food, they're
Well,
they're vetted,
yeah,
that's a little
food's a
different.
different.
Yeah,
I'm talking about people,
like a
somebody
background check
comes
or
in and sells
something.
$1 worth of popsicles, don't want them, but I'm not worried about it. They come in and sell a 10,000, not solar, I won't use solar. They come in and say, okay, I'm gonna fix your roof.
Yeah.
And it's, I'll do it for $4,500. And you have a senior that sounds great because they know they've had a leak, and we have no way of vetting those, and I guarantee you by the time they're done, they're gone, and it's too late for us to figure out who it is, because they're not gonna have a valid contractor's license, I can guarantee you. So I guess my whole question, make a short story long, how do we let the good people in and keep the ones that are going to harm our citizens out? Somehow, there's got to be a vetting process. I just don't know what it is.
And that's an excellent question I think the council makes, and obviously protecting our citizens is task number one for this council. What we can do, council, if you'd like, we're asking for your guidance tonight on what you like and what you don't like. And we're hearing you loud and clear right now that protection of our citizens is a very important factor that we want to try to put into this ordinance. If you allow us to go back and work with our city attorney and see what we can do to put something in here that achieves your goal while keeping us consistent with state and federal case laws, we will do that.
I would like to see something that just, really has some real teeth to it. For lack of a better term, have it black and white. As far as penalties, you're caught outside of bounds. You're immediately ran out of town. You don't come back. You don't cross go. You don't clear $200 and all that kind of stuff. My number one, and I'm like Don, I think West Council feels the same way. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when one of our community members gets stiffed.
Then it's a learning curve too. We have to make sure that our seniors understand that when they open that door, the first thing they should ask them is, "Where's your business license?"
Mm-hmm.
So so we'll have to educate, the constituents too.
Well, the group that I'm really concerned about is we have a lot of kids and children in high school, Girl Scouts, and coming around and selling their tickets or cookies or whatever else. They have to be exempt from this completely, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm sure that's something that you'll take into consideration, because that's ongoing. That in every community that's allowed, and it should be. So that's just my feeling. But they should be allowed to go house to house and try to make money for whatever function they're.
Right now, could they, just for those groups, could they be prosecuted under this section?
The DA wouldn't press
No,
misdemeanor charges, I'm sure.
that's not what I asked. I didn't ask, would they? All it takes is one complaint from a citizen, and the police department's going to have to get involved.
Certainly, it would be something that would fall under the current statute of, they could be prosecuted. Obviously, there's discretion involved.
We know they're not going to be.
Right, they're not going to be.
Right.
But is it in there? Yes. As it currently reads, they could be prosecuted.
So that's why I was asking, because that would have, definitely, like Bob said, there are certain community organizations that need to be exempted from this type type of ordinance?
Well, the
Oh, actually,
nonprofits would be.
For the
If I may.
nonprofit, yeah.
There you go. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the word.
The code doesn't apply to minors. It's in one, it says right here in this section. So minors are excluded. So if it's like kids selling candy bars, they're okay.
Yeah, but we also have the Salvation Army. We also have.
It would have to be tailored.
Yeah.
Because they come around, they leave the little thing on your door, put your stuff out on the doorstep, and we'll pick it up. And I think that falls under the purview of this.
It would.
Yeah, so if I can maybe recap a little bit, and then I want to add Mr. Graham in there as well, and how we can incorporate that into it as well. So obviously, we want to protect our citizens from scam artists. So if there's anything we can do to incorporate that into our ordinance, we will. And we'll work with our legal counsel and our chief to do everything we can in the powers that we have. In hearing Councilman Candia, he'd like to have a time standard. Is that the consensus of the council?
Absolutely.
That a time standard is something out there that we'd like to at least consider?
'Cause I, especially during the winter months when it gets dark early.
Sure.
You know, by 8 o'clock during winter, it's pitch black dark.
By 6 o'clock.
Can we, if I'm hearing you correctly, can we make, am I hearing that we should do it a seasonal type of time standard? Summertime, maybe they get a little bit later because it's lighter longer, but yet we don't want to get into darkness. Obviously, I think that's a threshold. Darkness is a threshold. Is
Yeah,
that-
I don't know if we can craft it that way or if we just set hours. I mean,
Well, you can do dusk to dawn. You can do a few other, 8 a.m. to dusk, half an hour before dusk.
Well, here's my problem with that. 6 o'clock, I'm sitting down to dinner. And I can't tell you how many times, knock, knock, knock on the door, get up, go to the door, and it's somebody, well, I'm kind of like Ed, they're not going to stay at my door very long. But that's, those, once you pass a normal business is shut down at 5 o'clock. Why would we want to let somebody else push past those hours? Just because they're door-to-door solicitors or whatever solicitors they are. Normal businesses in our town, there's not too many except the grocery store and, well, not even Yancey's. Most of them close at 5 o'clock. That's just my opinion. I'm not
I'm
saying
good
we
with
need
that.
to shut it that far down, but Nick agrees with me.
I'm more have to be more of the hard line with the hours, If we're gonna have to recraft it and we're gonna have to, because there's certain laws are in place, we can't require them to do too many things, but I think we can put hours in place and.
With that being said, I'm hearing either 8 to 5 or 8 to 6. Is there a consensus either way?
9 to 5 sounds good to me.
Banker's hours?
Yeah, and nothing on Sunday, too.
Yeah,
I hate it. Sunday is a day that people should not come to your door. I don't know how other people feel, but.
And I guess I just want to see how narrow can we
Right, and-
craft it to where we not only protect our citizens, but we also, because it's not just protecting their citizens from burglary. It's protecting them from harassment and everything else that can sometimes go along with that. Not every vendor is going to do that, I understand that. But the problem is, where do you draw the line between those that don't and those that do?
Sure.
Well, I
And
think-
maybe our guest here can, because they've been in the business for a while doing this, how do you draw the line? I wouldn't mind asking him that.
It's interesting to hear all of your recommendations. To be perfectly honest with you, I work with governments and water agencies for the most part, and I'm not calling Kusan after hours, or Lance or Lewis. So I don't have a ton of experience with it personally. I think you guys all make very good points that makes sense.
Right.
It's completely different part of my house.
What I'd like to do is we'll have this conversation, and then I'm going to take this back to our city attorneys, and then we're going to have a conversation about how we can implement this as best we can. So 9 to 5, is that what we'd like to shoot for?
Sure. Sounds good to me.
Okay. Now, we had a registry and a no solicitation program, that no solicitor, no solicitation program. Are you supportive of those programs? A do not disturb registry would basically allow citizens to apply through the city. We would keep and update that monthly. Any vendor would have to have a copy of that with them and making sure they understand which addresses they're not allowed to go to. The no solicitation signage, we would just buy a whole bunch of signs and provide them free to the public.
Well,
They
there's
like-
a lot of community, a lot of our citizens have those signs, the no solicitor signs on their doors, on their windows. I think it's a minimal amount if we could supply, because I think this is gonna probably raise a lot of conversation, and it'd probably be a good thing for us to address our seniors, and even if we supplied those, particularly to the seniors first, make sure that they got them, and the rest of our community, and and then have a registry. How well those vendors would pay attention to that remains to be seen.
If we had the registry, though, we can maybe put in, our thoughts are we could put it into the ordinance that they would have to carry that with them, so
Right.
that way if an officer rolled up on them and they didn't have that on them, that would be a way for the officer to understand that they're not in violation of the law. And it would keep the officer from having the responsibility of actually carrying it himself.
Yeah.
So we put that onus on the actual vendor themselves. So that's kind of our general thought, but again, we'd like to work with our legal counsel and making sure that passed all the litmus tests.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Is there anything that I missed, that any of the council members might want to add?
Yeah, I just think, we just need to tailor it, and it needs, be well-written, and well-crafted, and make sure it hits all the highlights and all the points everybody's brought up, and, particularly the hours, and, we come up with the registry and those kinds of things, and I think we're still gonna have to educate our community, to know, they're gonna have to take an active role if, there's people come to their doors, knock on their doors at all hours of the night, whatever, that they call and they have our PD respond quickly and deal with it. And I don't know that this takes care of the information Mr. Graham shared with us. For a lot of times they do this, walk the neighborhoods and leave flyers without contacting people at the door. So I'm not sure how we can.
We're going to go back and work with our legal counsel again and look at that section of the code
Okay.
as part of this, and then try to do one ordinance amendment encapsulating both of those at the same time. So probably in the next 30 to 45 days, we'll bring those back to you and hopefully incorporate some things into our leaflet program and ordinance that'll kind of put some of these challenges or obstacles in there.
Just one other quick question. Revenue stream behind this. If they sell something in our town, whatever it might be, is there going to be a revenue stream to the city?
Well, they're going to be required to get business license. That's really the only thing that we can really say on that one. That's going to be part of the process.
Like a 10% tithing?
No, but, they're talking about like with Amazon and everybody else, it doesn't matter where they sell.
Yeah.
There's going to be a sales tax on it that's going to come
Yeah.
back to the entity where it's sold.
It ought to. I don't know how you do that.
If somebody comes in here, and I like your example of Kirby vacuum cleaners because they used to come around all the time.
Still
Sell
do.
somebody a $500 Kirby vacuum cleaner, the company gets it, the place they sold it gets zero.
Yeah.
If Yancey was to sell a Kirby vacuum cleaner, they'd have to put whatever the going sales tax rate on it, and a penny of that would come back to us. And I just throwing that out there as a question, is there anything in law, state law? They keep changing it when it comes to all these mail order stuff.
Yeah, I think that's kind of out of our local purview, it's more the franchise tax board, unfortunately. We did recently have an audit done where,
Yeah, for me, the Board of Equalization came out and did an audit of our businesses to see if they had, one, a business license with us, and also registered with the state with a resale license. Out of all the ones that they checked, everybody had one. As far as your other question about sales tax, they are required to report when they file their tax reports and their quarterly reports that they had collected sales tax in our area, and we are credited for that. Truth is, whether they do that or not, doesn't matter.
It is.
The only recourse that we have is we can file a report with the Board of Equalization for them to review, to see that they are filing their taxes, that it looks like it is being in the correct area, and they can go back and review it. We all know with the case we had a couple of years ago, that they were successful. It took a while for it to happen, but we were able to get money back out of it.
Okay, is everybody happy with what you've heard so far? And staff will continue to tweak it.
Yep.
This will teach a newbie how to stay away from
Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Bob Naboa, I have clearly two addresses, 1045 Ruth Avenue as a resident, and I agree wholeheartedly with this gentleman. I apologize, I don't know your last name. And 1335 Main Street, Naboa Jewelers. And, we had two people today come into our business soliciting sales that clearly did not have licenses. And that happens on a weekly basis, and that's that revenue stream that's going out of town. And all of the things that I've heard tonight, I'm very encouraged by, and I encourage you to look at all of those. I agree 100% with the 9 to 5. We're open 9:30 to 5:30, and most of the businesses are 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, and I like that. I don't like to be interrupted or intruded upon on the weekends. I don't believe any of us would. We all work hard. And so I would encourage you to take the steps that are necessary to keep us in compliance. And I'm happy to say that the Franchise Tax Board was happy with my record keeping, and my wife's especially, because
So are
I know we're busy, and we're just real quickly, they came in as, this is a friendly visit. And I said, really? She says, yeah, we just want to make sure you're up to speed with the federal government, with the tax laws that the governor signed into play on January 1. And I said, okay, fine. She says, she flipped open her computer and said, and what about this entry here? And I thought, wait a minute, when did this end being a friendly visit? Now, we have all the answers, and they are all correct answers. And she was very happy when she left. But here's a case of where they are scrutinizing us as individual merchants to a level that most of these other people aren't being scrutinized at all. And another one that we have to deal with is weights and measures. And again, I'm here on behalf of the merchants. Nobody knows it except me, but we're all here being, nailed to the cross on every opportunity by every level of government, not excluding this one. And yet all these people come into town and prey upon this community and siphon off all this money, and this city never receives any benefit for it. So I encourage you to do everything you possibly can to tighten this up to a level where it chokes. And honestly, that's the way I feel. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Yes, sir.
Again, my name is Casey Graham. The admin site was mentioned, and it's a great idea, but a lot of times these groups come into an area and they send out teenagers, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids to sell stuff. Those kids aren't going to pay the fines. So when you guys write this, you need to be able to go for the head of the business and not the individual possibly selling it, because they're being dropped off in a neighbor and told, we'll pick you up in an hour or two, go door to door and do your thing. And those kids aren't the ones that are going to be paying the fines, and more than likely you'll probably never collect the money from them to begin with. So it'd have to be a higher level.
We discussed this when we sat down and talked, and there was two trains of thought on that. Is exactly what he just said, is you go after the person that holds the business license. feel that could be challenged because they're not here. I don't know if lawfully that could be challenged. Our other train of thought is we cite the individual, the company would either in turn have to pay for it or not get their business license renewed. Or we pull their business license until those fines are paid. So even if they had an individual working for them, they would have a debt to the city through that business, and their business would no longer be able to go door to door anybody that worked for that company. It was kind of our thought of how we might model that.
Okay. Well, I think it's worthwhile giving a lot of thought to, and like I say, crafting it and try to make sure we don't leave any loopholes and with everybody's thoughts and input. And I'm sure you'll come up with something, and we'll take another look at it. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Michael, and Stephanie, and Chief, Bob, everybody. Okay. We'll go to item 11, items from the District 5 Supervisor, Jim D. Martini. Sorry we kept you so long, Jim.
Probably feels like he's in Patterson.
Patterson wouldn't even be out of the consent calendar yet. Good evening, Mayor Caton, council members and staff. I have a few things for you tonight. First of all, I wanted to make you aware of our new jail's groundbreaking, which is going to be Friday at 9:30. This is a combination of two projects, an $80 million project for jail modernization, and then another $40 million extension to that. This is open to the public. I think the city has probably received the invitation, but anyway, it starts at 9:30 right at the sheriff's office, and you're all welcome. Not only the council members, but any member of the community is also welcome to come to that. It was a long time in coming to put together that kind of money, and it's all funded from the state through prison realignment. Of other interest, there's been a problem with one of the wells in the Crow's Landing Community Service District. One of the wells is shut down. They're trying to figure out what exactly is the cause of the problem. They're going to get some cameras out there and try and determine whether the well went dry or the well collapsed. We really don't know at this time. However, there is a significant problem that we're going to have to deal with. I'm going to go out to the district for their community service district meeting on August 20th, and by then we should know what the problem is. They also want an update on the air base, which has not changed since I talked to you about it. We're still doing environmental review, and we have some drawings, but nothing significant has been done on that. There would be a change from what I told you the last time. And of course, our health summit is coming up on the 21st right here in Newman at the West Side Theater. Everything seems to be coming along all right on that. We do have confirmation from the vendors and the teams, and the city of Newman has a team. And talked to the captain tonight. So we have confirmed teams from Gustine and Patterson School District, and a couple of other groups. We expect to start the weigh-in at about 11:30. The Ag Commissioner will be out doing an official wait, and then we have our speaker, Dr. LaPaz from Doctors Medical Center, and also a man who will give a short presentation who was hired by Emmanuel Hospital to do statistical analysis of the West Side and where the gaps are in healthcare, and this is what the task force will be focusing on once his study is complete. That is 100% funded by Emmanuel Hospital. And at the summit, we will have this. This is a draft, but they're at the printer now. This is a health service directory, and in this, it is listed of all the doctors on the West Side, Patterson, Newman, Gustine, and where they are, and some maps in there and telephone numbers. This is a project of the task force, and we will have them available at the summit, and then we will bring some to City Hall and put some in the libraries. These are free, and I think it's a lot of useful information in there of hours of operation, phone numbers, and the kinds of doctors that you have right here on the west side. We had did one several years ago, but, needs to be updated from time to time, so this will be the new update. And on September 25th, the task force is going to be working with other organizations, community-based organizations on health, fitness-related issues. We're going to have a meeting facilitated by the Health Services Agency on September 25th. The task force actually has a coalition of, municipal governments, healthcare professionals, business community, schools, but we're reaching out to other organizations too, where we might work together with to accomplish, whatever needs to be done in this area as far as health and fitness. And I'll have more on that as we get a little closer to it, but that tentatively has been scheduled for September 25th. And that's all I have for this evening, unless you have any questions for me.
Questions or comments for Jim? Okay.
Okay,
Thank you, Jim. Item 12, items from the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just, excuse me, a couple quick items. Next Monday, which will be August 18th, I'm going to be hosting the Farmland Working Group. They'll be hosting their meeting here at our city hall, and I'll be doing a presentation on Measure Z for them, and try to share with them why we think Measure Z is a good measure for ag preservation in Stanislaus County, and why we've crafted it and used the Ventura SOAR model, and how we've done that with the city of Newman. So that's going to be happening here on the 18th. You can contact me if you want further details on that. We've talked a little bit about dispatch services with our public safety subcommittee. We're moving along. We're hoping to have something in front of you in the next 30 to 45 days for a council to kind of give direction for staff on where we would like to go with that. In this week's newspaper, you'll see 2 bids that are going out, the Louis J. Newman rehab project, remodel project. Those bids are going out. The notice will be published on Thursday. I think plans can start getting picked up on Friday. We anticipate that you'll be awarding that bid the first meeting in September. We anticipate it's about a 125-day construction period. And then also the CNG project, which is a fast fuel. Currently, as you know, we have a number of CNG compressed natural gas vehicles. We have a slow fill, and it takes many hours to fill these up. Now we can do it with this new project. We'll be able to do it in 5 to 10 minutes on some of these larger projects, on the vehicles. So that'll make it a lot easier on our staff. And then lastly, just a heads up, there's going to be a lot of sidewalk repairs that are going to start to take place in the Von Renner School District, or Von Renner School area, and the sidewalks up there for the kids that are traversing their way to school. So there'll be some grinding going on out there like we've done in the downtown and some of the other areas in town. So with that, I can answer any questions that you may have.
Questions, comments for city manager? Okay, thanks, Michael. Items from staff. Chief?
Nothing tonight.
Steph?
Nothing tonight.
Lou?
Nothing tonight.
Listen?
Nothing tonight.
Wow. Okay. Nick?
Nothing.
Bob? Don?
Nothing.
I don't have anything.
Nobody, you got anything to say?
It's nice to be back.
It's good to have you back. I just have just a couple things. The Fall Festival Parade is coming up on August 31st at 11, and we've always participated. Is the council's desire to participate in the parade again this year at 11?
Absolutely.
Okay, and Kasun, could you have the electric vehicles all cleaned up and ready for us to use in the parade?
Yes.
And usually stage them at Mariposa and S Street.
Yes, we had a meeting with the committee members recently, so we clarify all the items,
Okay.
including that.
Okay, yeah, well, typically the council in the last few years have used those in the parade, so if you could have those ready,
Yeah, we will make sure.
that'd be great.
Yes.
However, there's one change this year. I won't be able to join you in the parade. I've been honored and asked to be the Grand Marshal for this year's Fall Festival, so they've told me I can't be mayor that day. So I was going to try to do both, do one, hop back and go with you guys, but they told me I can't do that. So anyway, so I'll let the Fall Festival Parade Committee know that there'll be 4 council members participating. And I'll have to go solo in the parade as Grand Marshal, so that's going to be a great honor. And I was going to just remind everybody on the Healthy Choices Summit, Westside Theater on the 21st at 11:30. And how many teams we have, Mike? 1 team. So this is the year Newman's going to win, I think, I hope. So hope to see everybody there at that. And then with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good night, we're adjourned.